We have gathered here in Princeton to serve the cause of the Hebrew University in Jerusalem.
In 2025, deep within the archival vaults of CBS News in New York City, a young producer stumbled upon a forgotten metal case, dusty, rusted, and labeled simply Murrow, 1954, Confidential. Inside, an old reel-to-reel tape, a worn leather-bound notebook, and a yellowed letter addressed "To whom it may concern." The letter was signed by Edward R. Murrow, one of the most respected American journalists of the 20th century. In his familiar, tight script, he wrote of a long suppressed interview with none other than Albert Einstein. Recorded just 1 year before the scientist's death, it had never aired. Murrow's reason was clear. The world wasn't ready. Now, 70 years later, the seal is broken. The tape hums to life, static crackles, and then, unmistakably, Einstein's voice. Low, reflective, deliberate. "We are not just bodies," he says. "Death does not end consciousness. I do not propose this as theory. I state it as understanding." What follows is not a lecture. It's not a sermon. It's a confession. One of the most brilliant minds to walk this earth, speaking candidly on what lies beyond it. He speaks of waves and oceans, energy and memory, soul and science, concepts that once divided reason and religion now swirl together. Einstein doesn't sound afraid. He sounds certain. In the notebook, Murrow detailed every moment. "His eyes," he wrote, "burned not with madness, but with clarity." And then, one sentence scrawled underlined at the bottom of the final page. "If humanity ever teeters at the edge, if faith collapses and fear spreads, release this. We're not at the edge. We've already crossed it. For the first time, you're about to hear what Einstein believed we become after we die. Not from mystics, not from prophets, but from the physicist who rewrote reality." It was a cold spring afternoon in Princeton, New Jersey, March 1954. The clouds hung low over the university town, and a quiet chill lingered in the wind. Edward R. Murrow arrived in a modest black Plymouth sedan, carrying only a notebook and a small voice recorder. He had received a handwritten note, no return address, just a signature. A. E. Einstein's cottage was nestled behind a row of modest elms. No guards, no fanfare, just a mailbox and a knock. Murrow was ushered in by Einstein himself, wearing a worn sweater, wool slippers, and a distant smile. "You came," Einstein said. "Good. That means you're not afraid of questions without answers." Murrow, not easily shaken, felt something different in the air. This wasn't just another scoop. This was a man who had outlived wars, witnessed the atom split, and now seemed eager to speak not to the world, but to history. Einstein led him into a small study, books piled high, some open mid-thought. The fireplace burned quietly. No cameras, no formalities, just 2 chairs and time. "Why now?" Murrow asked, placing the recorder down. Einstein took a long breath. "Because I don't have many laters left." They sat for over an hour. Murrow would later describe it as surreal, Einstein weaving between metaphysics and physics as if they were the same thread. Time, energy, consciousness, and yes, death. Einstein wasn't giving a lecture. He was offering closure. To himself? To the world? That part was unclear. But what was certain was the weight of his words, the pauses between them, and the strange sense that this interview was not just recorded, it was entrusted. Murrow never aired the tape. He stored it with care, adding a personal warning. Only reveal this when the world can hear, not just listen. Nearly 7 decades later, that time has come. Murrow adjusted his recorder. The reel turned, humming quietly. Einstein sat forward, his hands folded, eyes fixed on the flickering fire. "Let us begin with what most fear. Death," he said, "not as an end, but as a threshold." He paused, then added, "You see, young man, we've misunderstood death because we've misunderstood life. We believe consciousness is something produced by the brain, like music from a violin. But it is not so. The brain does not create consciousness. It receives it." Murrow blinked. "Receives it? Like a radio?" Einstein smiled. "Precisely. The signal exists beyond the device. When the violin is broken, the melody is not gone. It's simply not heard from that instrument anymore." He leaned back. "I have studied energy, time, and space. Nothing is ever lost, only transformed. It is not merely poetic. It is physics. So why would consciousness, the most structured form of energy, be the lone exception?" Murrow noted the conviction in his voice. This was not speculation. This was something Einstein had pondered in the quietest corners of his mind. "Consciousness," Einstein continued, "is like a wave. As long as it moves across the ocean of being, it is visible. When it collapses, it becomes invisible. But the ocean retains the wave's energy. It returns to the whole." Murrow asked, "Do you mean a soul?" Einstein nodded slowly. "If by soul you mean the core of awareness, yes. That which observes, remembers, loves. That which exists independent of form." He stood and walked toward the bookshelf. Pulling out a volume on thermodynamics, he held it up. "Entropy. Nothing disappears. Even in decay, energy persists." Returning to his chair, he said more softly, "I do not need a religious text to believe this. I need only follow the logic of the universe." Murrow pressed further. "So what happens at the moment of death?" Einstein closed his eyes. "Imagine a mirror shattered. The reflection is gone, but the light that created it remains. Death is the mirror breaking, but the light is eternal." The fire cracked in the hearth. Neither man spoke. Outside, the wind rustled the trees. "You may ask why this matters," Einstein said at last, "because if death is not an end, then life is not a race. It is a classroom, and everything we do, how we love, how we hurt, how we forgive, becomes part of what we carry beyond." He looked directly at Murrow. "This is not mysticism. It is continuity." Murrow would later write, "I saw no madness in his eyes, only mercy. A man preparing not for disappearance, but for return." Einstein shifted in his seat, his fingers lightly tapping the armrest. "Now we enter the domain of the strange," he began. "Quantum mechanics, a field I respect, yet one I wrestled with deeply." Murrow leaned in. "Isn't quantum physics unpredictable?" Einstein nodded. "Precisely. At its heart lies uncertainty. And yet, within that uncertainty lies profound truth." He reached for a piece of chalk and sketched 2 slits on the small blackboard near his desk. "The double-slit experiment. You fire particles at a screen through 2 slits, expecting a simple pattern. But if unobserved, they behave like waves, creating interference. If observed, they act like particles. The only variable that changes the outcome is observation." He turned to Murrow. "What does that tell us?" "That the act of observing influences the outcome. That consciousness, not just matter, shapes the physical world." Murrow looked at the sketch. "So, reality itself is not fixed?" "Not entirely," Einstein replied. "It is fluid, potential, collapsing into form only when we look." He paused, then brought up another enigma. "Entanglement. 2 particles become connected. Move one, and the other responds instantly, even across galaxies. It violates what we know of space and time." Murrow frowned. How is that possible? Einstein raised a brow. That is the question, and my answer, though I once resisted it, is that something exists beyond time and space, a field, a unity, call it what you will. He leaned in. And if particles can be connected across light years, why not minds? Why not souls? The room felt heavier. The fire popped sharply. Quantum physics, Einstein said softly, is not just the science of the small. It is the doorway, a crack in the wall of materialism. Through it, we glimpse something greater. Murrow whispered, consciousness is non-local. Yes, Einstein affirmed. It is not confined to the brain. It is not born with the body. It is a field we access, not something we produce. He stood and looked out the window. The branches outside swayed gently. The future of science, he said, will not be to destroy mystery. It will be to illuminate it. He turned back. And when it does, the line between physics and philosophy will vanish, and we will see what has always been true. We are more than flesh. We are participants in the creation of reality itself. Murrow didn't speak. He couldn't. In that moment, the world felt less solid, but far more alive. Murrow shifted in his chair. And what of God, Professor? Do you believe in him? Einstein gave a long pause. Then, with a faint smile, he said, the word God has been so misused that I hesitate to use it. People imagine a man with a beard sitting on a throne. That is not what I see. He pointed upward, then inward. To me, God is not a being. God is being itself, the ocean in which all waves arise, the field in which all consciousness exists. Murrow scribbled furiously, then looked up. So God is consciousness? Einstein nodded. Collective, eternal, infinite. Every mind, every living thing is a ripple of that greater field. When you love, when you seek truth, you align with that field. He added softly, this is why mystics across cultures spoke of unity, of returning to the source. They weren't wrong. They simply used different words. Murrow leaned back, absorbing it all. So when we die, we return, Einstein said, to that source. Not to be judged, but to merge, and perhaps, someday, choose to ripple again. The room fell into silence, the kind only truth can create. Murrow hesitated, then asked, and what happens next, Professor? If we return to the source, is that the end? Einstein shook his head gently. No, not the end. A pause. A choice. He looked toward the flames in the fireplace, then back at Murrow. Reincarnation is not a punishment, nor a law. It is an opportunity. Consciousness, once returned to the field, is free, but many choose to return. Murrow frowned. Why would anyone choose to come back? Einstein's gaze softened. To learn, to love more fully, to understand what was once misunderstood. Each life offers a perspective, a lesson. The soul is a student, and the universe is the school. He stood, hands clasped behind his back. Some souls grow quickly, absorbing what they came to experience. Others need more time, more cycles. He turned to face Murrow. And none are lost. Even those who fall, who hurt others, they too are given chances, not in judgment, but in grace. Murrow asked, so there is no hell? Only the one we carry within, Einstein replied. A soul bound by hatred or fear may dwell in shadow, but not forever. Growth is inevitable. Light draws all things to it. He sat again. Free will is paramount. Nothing is forced. But the moment a soul desires truth, the universe aligns to help it find the way. Murrow scribbled in his notebook, visibly moved. Einstein smiled faintly. I suspect this is the grand design, not one of judgment and division, but of return and realization, until one day the soul no longer needs form and chooses to simply be. He paused, then added, "That, I believe, is what some have called liberation." Murrow flipped to a fresh page in his notebook. "You've spoken of death, of return, of light. But what of us now? What do you see coming?" Einstein's expression darkened slightly. "That," he said, "is the part I almost didn't wish to speak." He stood and moved to the window, looking out at the gray Princeton sky. Humanity is advancing in technology faster than it is in wisdom. We have split the atom, reached into the stars, but we have not yet learned to truly see each other. He turned back. We are losing connection, not just with one another, but with ourselves, with the sacredness of life, with meaning. Murrow asked quietly, "And if this continues?" Einstein nodded gravely. "Then the tools we create will become weapons. The progress we chase will become poison. Without unity, without the understanding that we are part of one consciousness, we will collapse into conflict." He stepped closer. "The wars of the future will not be over land or gold. They will be over identity, over meaning, and they will be more devastating than anything we have seen." Murrow's hand trembled slightly as he wrote. Einstein's voice softened. "But it is not too late. This is why I speak now. If even a few understand, it can ripple outward. Awareness is contagious." He placed a hand over his chest. "If we remember that love is our natural state, not fear, then this tide can still turn." Murrow looked up. "So, what must we do?" Einstein smiled faintly. "Seek truth, choose kindness, resist division. Teach your children to wonder, not just at stars, but at strangers." He walked back to his chair and sat, the fire casting long shadows across the room. "We are at the brink," he said. "Not of ending, but of choosing, between fear and understanding, between illusion and truth." He looked at Murrow one last time. "The next century will not be shaped by inventions. It will be shaped by consciousness." In a quiet archive room at the Institute for Advanced Study, a faded audio tape was unearthed. The voice on the recording belonged to another legend, Kurt Gödel, Einstein's closest friend and fellow thinker. The interview was recorded in 1972, just a few years before Gödel's own passing. The interviewer asked, "What did Einstein believe about death? Did he ever speak of it with you?" Gödel's voice, soft but deliberate, answered, "Yes, often. We would walk the same path by the lake almost every afternoon. He didn't speak of death with fear. He was curious. He saw it as a problem to be solved, not a fate to be feared. He told me once," Gödel continued, "that the soul is not bound by space and time. He said, 'Kurt, if the universe bends back on itself in space, why not in consciousness?' He believed the self could loop, could return, not randomly, but with purpose." The interviewer asked if Einstein believed in God. Gödel chuckled lightly. He did, but not the God of punishment or reward. He believed in the order behind the chaos, the light behind the curtain. He would say, "If equations can reveal nature, perhaps truth reveals God." There was a pause on the tape. Then Gödel added quietly, "We both believed that the mind continues. It's too elegant, too structured to be discarded like waste. I spent my life proving incompleteness in logic, but in those walks with Albert, I saw completeness, in spirit." The interviewer asked, "Do you think he was right?" Gödel replied, "Yes, and I think, when he died, he finally saw the rest of the equation." He paused again, then added, "Einstein feared ignorance more than death. He feared a world so obsessed with measurement, it would forget meaning. The tape ends with one final statement. He told me once, "We are not alone in this universe, Kurt. We are all waves in one great sea. And death is simply the tide returning home." The revelations from Einstein's interview and Gödel's reflections do more than inspire. They challenge us to reconcile science and spirituality. At first glance, physics and mysticism seem worlds apart. Yet when Einstein described consciousness as non-local, he echoed concepts found in Eastern philosophy for centuries. In Vedanta and Mahayana Buddhism, the idea that individual identity is an illusion, that we are all part of a unified field, is foundational. Einstein reached a similar conclusion, not through meditation, but through mathematics. Quantum mechanics, especially phenomena like the double-slit experiment and quantum entanglement, suggest a universe where the observer matters. This aligns with the Buddhist teaching of dependent origination. That reality is shaped by perception. When Einstein said, "Consciousness shapes reality," he wasn't abandoning science. He was extending its frontier. The idea of the brain as a receiver, rather than the source of consciousness, also parallels the concept of the mind stream in Tibetan Buddhism, a continuum of awareness that exists beyond one physical life. Einstein's wave analogy mirrors this seamlessly, a temporary form returning to the ocean. What makes Einstein's view revolutionary is that he bridged this spiritual insight with scientific reasoning. He didn't dismiss the soul. He attempted to define it through the structure of space and energy. This convergence of wisdom traditions and quantum thought offers a profound message. Consciousness is not an epiphenomenon. It may be fundamental to existence itself. If we accept this, even as a possibility, our priorities shift. The focus turns from accumulation to awakening, from competition to compassion, from survival to meaning. Science may one day build devices to map consciousness fields, but long before that, humanity must remember what ancient sages and modern geniuses alike have whispered, that the greatest mystery is not beyond us. It is within. The reel stopped with a soft click. Murrow sat in silence, the weight of Einstein's words settling into his bones. He didn't move. He didn't speak. The fire had gone out, but the warmth of the truth still glowed inside the room. He looked down at his notes, pages filled with revelations that could ignite debate, division, or illumination. He knew what he held wasn't just an interview. It was a legacy, not of equations, but of essence. Later, in the margin of his notebook, Murrow scribbled one final thought. Einstein did not fear death because he had already met it in his mind and found it was not darkness, but light. The tape, the notes, the moment, they were sealed away, waiting for a world ready not just to listen, but to hear. And now, decades later, that moment has arrived. The truth Einstein shared was not merely about the universe. It was about us, about the mirror we avoid, the mystery we pretend isn't there. But it is, always has been. We are not alone. We are not just flesh and memory. We are awareness in a great unfolding. And death, so feared, so avoided, is not the end. It is the returning. Murrow's last recorded words after the interview were simple, almost whispered. Live not in fear. Live in search. And perhaps that is where the real journey begins.